Hi there, welcome back for another episode of Dave's Desk Bible Basics. Today we're looking at Paul's letter to the Colossians, another letter written by Paul around AD 60 to the church in Colossae and the surrounding area, whilst Paul is in house arrest in Rome. And it seems that what's happened is that, as we said when we were at the video on Ephesians, Paul spent 3 years in Ephesus, preaching the gospel, and whilst he was there, a guy called Epaphras comes to faith. Epaphras has then travelled down the main trade route to the east and come to Colossae, and Colossae, that used to be this really important trading point, has really sort of dwindled in its renown and is now a second-rate town on a trading route. And he's planted a church there, and the church has done all right for a while, but has come under assault really from people who today would be described as heretics, people who don't have the true gospel at heart. And Epaphras has not been able to cope with that and to deal with that himself, and so he's travelled to Rome to be with Paul and to aid him in his house arrest, and also to get Paul's help with the situation in Colossae. And this letter is Paul's way of addressing the false teaching within the Colossian church. And it seems from reflecting on the letter that he's dealing with some fairly significant errors. So it seems like there's ceremonialism, which is where there's too much emphasis based on special days, special food, special acts like circumcision. That there's also dealing with asceticism, where people are being overly prescriptive on what is and isn't okay to do. That there's angel worship, which is worshipping something that isn't God, which is not right. That there's, hand in hand with that, a diminished view of Christ. And there's also emerging from other sort of mystery religions that were around at the time, this idea of secret knowledge and a reliance on human wisdom and tradition. And so all of these together seem to be a form of very legalistic Judaism, and the sort of the elements of something that will come to be known as Gnosticism, I think a feeling of belief where there's a very clear demarcation between the physical things and spiritual things that starts at about 150 odd years after this letter is written. It slowly comes to being. And so Paul counters these different false ideas and attitudes by focusing his teaching in one specific area, and that is on the person and work of Christ. And so he begins by demonstrating Christ as the creator and the sustainer of creation, as the image of the invisible God, as the fullness of God in bodily form, the one who reconciles all to God, and the sufficiency of Christ for believers in salvation. So there needs to be no asceticism, there needs to be no other ceremony, there needs to be no other secret knowledge, there needs to be no great working. All there needs to be is Christ and faith in him and the gift of grace that came through his death and his resurrection. And in that sense it's quite similar to a lot of other teaching, but it's a really great place or a great word to go to when trying to reflect on the ministry and the nature of Christ. So I'd encourage you to read chapter 1 verses 15 to 23 and just ask the question, do we hold Christ above all else? Do we hold Christ in the way that Paul talks about Christ in this passage? Do we have a high enough regard for the person and the ministry of Christ? I hope that's given you something to think about, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Goodbye.